Little girl understands Sicilian words at table 12 and desperately warns mafia boss not to drink The brass handle of the restaurant door was cold, impossibly heavy, as if it knew I had no right to touch it. I pulled, and the scent of old money, garlic, and floor wax rolled out, a warm, suffocating wave. "Mommy, it's shiny," Emery whispered, her small hand tight in mine. "It is, baby." I tried to smile, but my lips felt like cracked cement. "Just remember, we're going to be very quiet, like a library game, okay? We sit, we have some water, and then we go." Emery nodded, her dark pigtails bouncing. At 9 years old, she understood the library game all too well. It was our code for Mommy is scared, and Mommy was terrified. The hostess, a woman so tall and thin she looked like a folded napkin, gazed down her nose at us, at me, at my worn brown coat, my 10-year-old black flats, the faint stain on my jeans I'd tried to scrub out in the gas station bathroom. Her eyes lingered on Emery, whose own coat was clean but a full size too small. "A reservation?" Her voice was smooth, bored. "We were told to be at table 10. The words came out weak, breathless. The hostess raised a perfect eyebrow. Table 10 was a ghost, a myth. It was the table Ryder my ex used to brag about, the one he said was held. I'd never seen it, but his instructions had been precise, delivered by a man whose face I'd only seen in shadows. 7 o'clock, table 10, or you won't have to worry about custody, because you'll never see her again. The hostess's eyes flicked to something behind me. Her posture changed. The disdain melted into pure, practiced deference. "Mr. Moretti, good evening. Your table is ready, of course." A man moved past us. He didn't brush against me, but I felt the air pressure change, the warmth of him, the scent of expensive wool and something sharp, like ozone. I instinctively pulled Emery closer to my side, shrinking against the wall. I didn't need to look. I knew who he was. Everyone in New York knew Luca Moretti, and he was a whisper, a headline, a shadow that owned other shadows. He was the kind of man Ryder pretended to be, the kind of man Ryder's vicious, low-level associates answered to from 10 rungs down the ladder. He was danger in a suit that probably cost more than my apartment building. He paused, his head turning just enough. I caught his profile, a strong, straight nose, a jaw that looked carved from granite, dark hair brushed back from his forehead. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Emery. His eyes, dark and unreadable, held hers for a single, charged second. Emery, my brave, quiet girl, just looked back. She didn't smile, but she didn't flinch. He broke the gaze first, giving a curt nod to the hostess and proceeding into the main dining room. 3 other men, all in identical dark suits, followed him like loyal, well-armed dogs. The hostess, flustered, turned back to me. "Table 10, she repeated, her voice tight with annoyance, as if my presence was a personal insult. "This way." She led us through the maze of white tablecloths. The restaurant, La Sorte, was all dark wood, deep red leather and hushed voices. Glasses clinked like tiny bells. Silverware gleamed under lights so dim they felt intimate. Every person here belonged. Their clothes were quiet, their jewelry real. I felt like a stray dog that had wandered into a cathedral. Table 10 was small, tucked near an alcove, set for 2. It felt exposed. I slid Emery into the booth first, her back to the wall, and I sat opposite, facing the room, facing him. Luca Moretti's table was in the center, the throne. He sat at its head, his 3 lieutenants flanking him. A waiter was already there, pouring water. Luca was listening to one of his men, his expression perfectly, terribly neutral. "Are we in trouble, Mommy?" Emery asked, her voice too small for the space. "No, baby, not at all." I forced another smile, pushing my frayed hair behind my ear. "This is just a thing we have to do. For the court, to show the judge we can go to nice places." It was a weak lie, and she knew it. Emery was too smart. She knew about Ryder. She knew his name meant slam doors, meant my tears, meant the time he'd grabbed my arm so hard the bruises lasted for 2 weeks. The custody battle was a looming monster, and Ryder was using every dirty trick to prove I was an unfit mother. This, being here, was one of them, a test of my obedience, proof I was still under his control. A waiter, different from the one at Moretti's table, appeared. "Can I get you something to drink?" "Just water, please, for both of us." He nodded and vanished. "I'm hungry," Emery whispered, eyeing the basket of bread on the empty table next to us. "I know, sweetie. I have a granola bar in my purse. We can have it in the car on the way home." I couldn't risk ordering. I couldn't risk the bill. I had exactly $27 in my wallet until my next paycheck. I watched Luca Moretti's table from under my lashes. A different waiter, older, with a sommelier's silver cup around his neck, was presenting a bottle of red wine. Luca nodded. The waiter opened it, poured a small amount. Luca swirled it, sniffed, and nodded again. The waiter filled his glass and the glasses of his men. I looked away, my heart hammering against my ribs. Just be invisible, Maya. 1 hour. Be invisible. Beside us, at table 12, 2 men were talking. I hadn't even registered them. They were nondescript. In bulky-looking suits, they were speaking Italian, their voices low and gravelly. I focused on Emery, pulling the worn coloring book and a few broken crayons from my purse. "Here, baby. Why don't you draw the shiny lights?" Emery took the book, but her head was tilted. She was listening. "Em," I whispered, "it's not polite to listen." "It's not Italian. Mommy?" she whispered back, her brow furrowed. "It's like no, the secret words he taught me." My blood went cold. My father-in-law, Emery's grandfather, had been from Palermo, and we spoke Sicilian, a dialect he always said was for family and for secrets. He had adored Emery, and in the year before he died, he had taught her phrases, silly songs, and, apparently, his secret words. "What are they saying, Em?" My voice was barely a tremor. She listened, her small face concentrating. "They're talking about the big table, the man, Moretti." The bread in my stomach turned to lead. "Emery, stop listening." "They said, vino rosso, the red wine." She looked at me, her eyes wide with a fear that mirrored my own. And veleno. Mommy, what's veleno?" I knew that word. My ex-husband, Ryder, had used it once, laughing about some rival, poison. "Emery," my hand shot across the table, grabbing hers. "They are joking. It's a joke." "No, Mommy," her lower lip trembled. "The skinny man said, before he finishes the antipasto, he said the waiter is paid. They're going to hurt him." I looked at table 12. The 2 men were eating bread, not looking at anyone. They looked like Ryder's men. Hard, empty, vicious. Then I looked at Luca Moretti. He had just raised his glass of red wine. He was talking to his lieutenant, a slight smile on his face as he prepared to take a sip. My world shrank to that single, terrible moment. If I said nothing, a man would die. A bad man, maybe. But a man, if I said anything, I was causing a scene. I was getting involved, and Ryder would find out, and he would take Emery. He would say I was delusional, that I was dragging our daughter into dangerous fantasies. He would crucify me. My silence was my daughter's safety. "Mommy," Emery's voice was desperate. "He's going to drink it." I couldn't move. I was a coward, frozen in the ice of my own fear. I stared at the wine glass, at the dark red liquid, at the hand that held it. Do nothing. Save your daughter. But Emery was not a coward. Before I could lunge, before I could even process it, she slipped from the booth. "Emery, no, come back!" She was fast, a little 9-year-old blur, weaving between a waiter's legs, making a straight line for the throne. She didn't shout. She ran right up to Luca Moretti and grabbed the sleeve of his jacket, tugging on it with all her might. The restaurant, the whole world, stopped. The music, the clinking, the murmuring voices, it all vanished. I was on my feet, stumbling, my chair scraping loudly on the wood floor. "Emery!" Luca Moretti had frozen, the wine glass an inch from his lips. He looked down at my daughter. his expression not angry but utterly, terrifyingly still. His lieutenants were half out of their seats, hands inside their jackets. "Don't drink it," Emery whispered, her voice frantic, piercing the silence. "Please, it's bad. It's Veleno." She pointed, her whole small arm shaking. "Right at table 12. They said it, in Sicilian. They said poison, in the red wine." I watched. My heart stopped, as Luca Moretti's eyes narrowed. He didn't look at table 12. Not yet. He looked at Emery. Then he looked past her, across the room, and his eyes found mine. He pinned me to the spot. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't run. Very slowly, he set the wine glass down on the white tablecloth. It made no sound. He murmured something to the man on his right, just 2 words. Then he flicked his chin, a movement so small I almost missed it, in the direction of table 12. It wasn't chaos. It was physics. It was a predator's calculated strike. 2 of his men stood. They didn't run. They separated. One gliding to the left of the main dining room, one to the right, their paths converging on table 12. The 2 men at that table saw it. Their eyes widened. One of them dropped his bread, his hand darting inside his coat. He never had a chance. Moretti's man was on him, moving faster than I thought a human could move. A hand clamped on the man's wrist. There was a sickening, muffled snap. The man's face went white, but he didn't scream. The other man tried to get up, knocking his chair over, but the second lieutenant was behind him, an arm around his throat, lifting him from the ground. It was silent. It was brutal. It was efficient. A few diners looked up, annoyed by the sound of the fallen chair, but most didn't even notice. The lieutenants were already moving, pushing and dragging the 2 men toward the back exit, by the kitchens. No one tried to stop them. The restaurant staff didn't blink. It was as if 2 unruly patrons were simply being shown the door. In less than 10 seconds, it was over. Table 12 was empty, save for an overturned chair and a basket of bread. And Luca Moretti's eyes were back on me. One of his men, the one who had stayed, pulled out a chair. "Sit," Moretti said. His voice was low, rough, and it was not a suggestion. I walked, my legs feeling like they were full of wet sand, to his table. He pulled Emery, who was standing frozen, and gently, impossibly sat her on his knee. He didn't look like he was comforting her. He looked like he was holding a witness. "Emery," I choked out, reaching for her. "She stays," he said. He looked at me. "You sit." I sat. The chair was plush leather. I felt like I was sinking. He stroked Emery's hair, a gesture that seemed shockingly paternal, yet deeply unsettling. "You speak Sicilian, Piccolina, little one?" Emery nodded, her eyes fixed on his face. "My nonno taught me, and he was from Palermo." "A good city," Luca murmured. He looked at the wine glass, then back at her. "What exactly did you hear?" They said they would put Veleno in Mr. Moretti's red wine," Emery recited, her voice shaking but clear. "They said the waiter was paid, and they wanted it done before the antipasto was finished, so you would drink it all." Luca nodded slowly, his thumb rubbing the back of Emery's hand. He looked at me, and his eyes were chips of black ice. "And you? You speak Sicilian, too?" "No," I whispered, shaking my head. She told me, her grandfather, he taught her." "You were at table 10, he said. "It wasn't a question. Why are you here tonight, Mrs. "Quinn," I said. "Maya Quinn, this is Emery. We were just having dinner. It was a mistake. We'll go." I started to stand up. "Sit down," he repeated. The command was sharper this time, and I fell back into the chair. He smiled, but it was the most dangerous expression I had ever seen. "No, you weren't. You're terrified. You haven't ordered. Your daughter is hungry, and you're dressed." His eyes ran over my worn coat. "For a different kind of evening, so I will ask you one more time. Maya Quinn, why were you at table 10? "I couldn't. The terror of Ryder, of the custody hearing, of his threat. It was bigger, more immediate than the man sitting in front of me. If I told this man, it would get back to Ryder, and I would lose her. I can't say. My voice broke. Please, we just want to go home. We didn't see anything. I don't know anything. You can't, he mused, or you won't. He studied my face, his gaze so intense it felt like it was peeling my skin back. He saw the old faded bruise on my jawline, the one the makeup hadn't quite covered. He saw the panic in my eyes. He saw everything. He was quiet for a long time. The restaurant had already returned to its normal hum. A waiter appeared, cleared the 2 full wine glasses from his table, and brought a fresh bottle of water without a word. "Your daughter," Luca Moretti said finally, his voice soft, almost gentle, which was more terrifying than if he had shouted. "Your daughter just saved my life. I am not letting you and her walk out of here and into a taxi. You will finish your dinner. I'm having the waiter bring you whatever you want, and then I am driving you home." "No." The word was out before I could stop it. "No, you can't. Please, we're fine. We'll be fine. You don't understand. If anyone sees." "If who sees?" I clamped my mouth shut. He nodded, as if I had answered. That was not a request. Maya, eat. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. His car was a fortress, a black, custom-looking sedan that purred so quietly I couldn't hear the engine. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see out, only shadows and blurred lights. It smelled like rich, clean leather and something metallic, like iron or old blood. Emery, exhausted from the adrenaline, had fallen asleep in the back, buckled securely into the plush seat. I was in the passenger seat. My hands clenched so tightly in my lap my fingernails were biting into my palms. We drove in silence for the first 10 blocks. The silence was a living thing, a heavy blanket pressing down on me. "He'll kill me," I whispered. The words just fell out, torn from the deepest, most terrified part of me. "Or he'll take her. He'll do one, and then the other." Luca Moretti didn't look at me. His hands, large and capable, rested on the steering wheel. His eyes were on the dark road. "Who?" "My ex, Ryder Flynn." The name meant nothing to him. I saw it in the stillness of his face. Ryder was a small-time monster, not a king. His friends, they're the ones who told me to be there, at that table, at that time. The confession poured out, a toxic relief. I didn't know why. I thought it was a test, to see if I'd obey. "He's taking me to court, for Emery. He says I'm unfit. He has connections. He has pictures. He'll win. He'll take her from me if I don't do every single stupid, terrifying thing he says." Luca was quiet, but I saw his knuckles flex on the wheel, turning white for a second before relaxing. "He's dangerous," I added, needing him to understand the animal I was dealing with. "He knows people. He has people. Like those men, at that table. He doesn't have people like me." The words were flat. They were absolute. They hung in the air, a statement of fact, like saying the sky was blue. And I knew, in that moment, it was true. Ryder was a vicious stray. This man was the wolf. He pulled up to my building. The rundown 3-story walk-up in Queens looked even more pathetic next to the gleaming, armor-plated car. The streetlight above was flickering, casting the block in a sick, yellow light. "This is it," I said, my voice small. I unbuckled, my hands shaking. Thank you for the ride and the dinner. It was... Thank you." He had insisted. A full 4-course meal for Emery, a steak she devoured like she hadn't eaten in days, and a chocolate cake that had finally made her smile. I'd only been able to push pasta around on a plate, my stomach too tight to eat. I got out and opened the back door, gently unbuckling Emery. She was a dead weight, mumbling in her sleep as I lifted her into my arms. Her warmth was the only real thing in the world. I balanced her on my hip and looked at the man still sitting in the driver's seat. His window was down. His face was half in shadow. Mr. Moretti. Luca, he corrected. Luca. The name felt strange, heavy on my tongue. We won't say anything about tonight, about anything. I promise. Please, just let us go. He didn't answer, just looked at me, his gaze trailing from my face to the daughter I held clutched to my chest, to the peeling paint on my building's door. Get your daughter inside. Maya, lock your door. I nodded, turned, and fled. I fumbled with the key to the main door, my shoulder aching from Emery's weight. I didn't look back as I hurried up the 3 flights of stairs, the scent of boiled cabbage and old dust greeting me. Inside our apartment, I locked the 3 deadbolts. 1, 2, 3. The familiar thud-click slide was a small comfort. The apartment was tiny, but it was clean. It was ours. I laid Emery in her small bed, pulling the thin butterfly print blanket up to her chin. She sighed in her sleep, one hand curling by her face. I kissed her forehead, my heart aching with a love so fierce it was a physical pain. I had almost gotten her killed tonight. I walked to the front window, the one that looked out onto the fire escape and the street below. I needed to be sure he was gone. Luca's car was gone. My shoulders sagged in relief. But another car was there. A dark SUV parked across the street in the shadows of a closed bodega. It hadn't been there when we arrived. As I watched, 2 men got out. They were large, dressed in dark clothes. They didn't look up at my window. One lit a cigarette and leaned against the brick wall, his arms crossed, watching the entrance to my building. The other walked to the corner, standing with his back to the street, watching the alley. They weren't Ryder's men. They were his. He had posted guards. He hadn't asked. He hadn't warned me. He had just done it. I backed away from the window, my legs unsteady. I went to the kitchen and filled the kettle. My hands still trembling so hard I spilled water on the counter. While it boiled, I sat at my small, wobbly kitchen table, staring at the cracks in the linoleum. I should have been terrified. I was petrified of Ryder, of what he would do when he found out I'd left the restaurant, that I'd spoken to Luca Moretti. I was terrified of the men at table 12, of the silent, brutal efficiency of Moretti's men. And I was utterly, profoundly terrified of Luca Moretti. He was a man who commanded death with a nod. He lived in a world of poison and violence, a world I had just stumbled into. He was everything I had spent my life running from. But as I sat there, listening to the familiar whine of the kettle and the distant wail of a police siren, a new, strange, and deeply unwelcome feeling crept into my bones. The men outside weren't there to hurt me. They were there to stop anyone else from trying. He had been gentle with Emery. He had called her Piccolina. He had looked at me, not through me like Ryder did, but at me. He had seen my terror, and he hadn't used it against me. He had fed my daughter. He had brought us home. He was a monster, a man of menace, but for the first time in 2 years, I felt the knot of fear in my stomach loosen, just a fraction. I felt, in the most unsettling and contradictory way imaginable, safe. I slept on the couch, if you could call it sleeping. It was more like a 6-hour-long flinch, my body jolting at every creak of the radiator, every siren in the distance. I kept my eyes on the window, on the 2 dark shadows standing guard across the street. They were still there when the sun came up, replaced by 2 new shadows, just as large, just as still. This was my new reality. I was being protected by the kind of men Ryder only pretended to know. Emery woke up first, her small feet patting on the floor. "Mommy? Are the men still outside?" "Yes, baby, they're fine." "Are they, like our men now?" I stopped, my hand halfway to the coffee pot. "Our men," the terrifying, casual ownership in her voice. "No, Em. They work for Mr. Moretti. They're just making sure we're okay after last night." "I like him," she decided, climbing onto one of the wobbly kitchen chairs. "He's like a king, a sad king. He's a businessman, honey. Can we have cereal?" My stomach tightened. I had half a box of stale cornflakes and maybe 2 ounces of milk left. Let's see what we have, baby. I went to the front door, just to check the locks, a new, nervous habit. I opened the door a crack to peek into the hallway, and I stopped. On my threadbare welcome mat sat 3 large, very expensive-looking paper bags from La Sorte. My heart hammered. I scanned the empty, gray hallway. Nothing. I pulled the bags inside, my hands shaking, and locked the 3 bolts. I felt violated. How had they gotten into the building? How had they known? Then I remembered one of the guards had walked to the corner last night. He hadn't just been watching the alley. He'd been watching the entrance, waiting for someone to leave so he could slip in. I unpacked the bags on the counter. It wasn't just food. It was an apology. It was a statement, a full gallon of milk, a carton of a dozen brown, organic eggs, a thick loaf of real bakery bread, still slightly warm, a pound of real butter, not margarine, a bag of crisp, red apples, a bag of oranges, a pound of ground coffee, the good kind, the kind I hadn't smelled in 2 years, and in the last bag, a box of Fruity Pebbles and a small, brand-new sketch pad with a set of 12 colored pencils. Emery gasped. He got them for me, the pencils and the cereal. Mommy, he remembered. She had mentioned the cereal to him at dinner, a babbling, 9-year-old stream of consciousness about her favorite things. He had been listening. I wasn't happy. I was mortified. He had seen the bareness of my life. He had seen the empty cabinets and the broken crayons. This was charity. This was pity. But then I looked at Emery, who was carefully opening the sketch pad, her face lit with a joy I hadn't seen in months. I made her breakfast. Real eggs, toast with real butter, a full glass of milk. I drank the coffee, and it was so rich and strong I almost cried. It was humiliation. It was gratitude. It was the most confusing, unsettling morning of my life. I was scrubbing the egg pan when my old, cracked screen phone buzzed on the counter. An unknown number. My blood ran cold. Ryder, I wiped my wet hands on my jeans, my heart leaping into my throat. I answered, "Hello? Maya?" It wasn't Ryder. It was him. Luca. His voice was low, rough, and it went straight down my spine. How did you get this number?" "It's not hard to find," he said, impatient, as if I'd asked a stupid question. "I'm sending a car, 12:30. We're having lunch." "What? No, I can't. I have to go to work. I have my shift at the diner." There was a pause. It was not a friendly silence. "You don't—" I called the diner. "You have the day off, with pay." The world tilted. "You called my job. You can't just do that. You can't control my life." "I can," he said, his voice flat. "And I am." "This isn't about control, Maya. It's about facts. The men who tried to kill me, the men who used you and your daughter as decoys, are still out there, and I need to know about your ex." "What does Ryder have to do with this?" "He's the loose end," Luca said. "He's the reason you were there. He's the only connection they have to you. I'm handling the professional side. I need you to help me handle the personal one. 12:30. Be ready. Bring Emery." He hung up. I stood there, staring at the phone, my breath coming in short, angry gasps. He had called my job. He had inserted himself into my life, my schedule, my paycheck. It was exactly what Ryder did, just with more money. "Are we going somewhere, Mommy?" Emery asked, looking up from her drawing. "Yes, baby. We're having lunch with Mr. Moretti." "Good," she said, and went back to her sketch. I had no choice. I knew it. The men outside, the groceries on my counter. I was already in his cage. It just happened to be a gilded one. The car that arrived at 12:30 was the same black Fortress he'd driven last night. One of the guards, the one from the new shift, opened the back door for us, and he didn't smile. This time, the restaurant wasn't La Sorte. It was a small, brick-fronted place in a quiet neighborhood. It didn't even have a sign. Luca was waiting for us, not at a table, but in a private room upstairs. It was all dark wood with a single unadorned table. He stood when we entered, He was wearing a dark gray suit, no tie. He looked rested. He looked dangerous. Emery, with the uncomplicated trust of a child, ran right to him. "Mr. Luca, thank you for the cereal and the pencils. Look." She held up her sketch pad, showing him a surprisingly good drawing of the car from last night. A ghost of a smile touched Luca's lips. He crouched down to her level. "It's very good, Piccolina. You have a good eye. Did your nonno teach you to draw, too?" "No, he just taught me the secret words," she said proudly. "He said they were for protecting family." Luca's smile faded. He looked at her, his gaze intense. He was a smart man. He straightened up, his eyes finding mine. "Sit, Maya." We ate, again, he ordered for us. Simple pasta for Emery, a grilled chicken salad for me. He knew I was too agitated to eat much. He drank only water. "The men from last night, what?" he said, setting his fork down. "They weren't riders. They were professionals. The waiter who was paid off has disappeared. The poison was potent. It would have worked in less than a minute." I felt the blood drain from my face. "This was an internal matter," he continued, his voice low. "A betrayal. Someone inside my own organization. We are dealing with it." So we're okay then," I whispered. "It had nothing to do with us." "It had everything to do with you," he corrected, his eyes hard. "They used you. Ryder's connection to you is why they put you at table 10. Maybe as a distraction, maybe as a witness they could eliminate later. Either way, they put you and Emery in the middle of my war. That makes you my responsibility." "I'm not your responsibility," I said, my voice rising. "I'm a witness, that's all. I have my own problems, big ones." "I know," he said, his stillness suffocating. "Tell me about Ryder. Everything." I resisted. I told him it was my private battle. I told him I had a public defender. I told him I was handling it. He listened, his expression unchanged. When I was finished, he leaned forward. "Your public defender," he said, "is a burned-out, overworked man who has already advised you to give up partial custody. He's an idiot. He's what I can afford." "Not anymore." Luca slid a business card across the table. It was thick, creamy cardstock with simple black lettering. "Anna Cantrell, Esquire." "Anna is the most ruthless family law attorney in New York City," he said. "She's also my personal attorney. Her retainer, which is substantial, has been paid in full. Your first appointment is tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. You will bring her every piece of paper you have from your public defender." I stared at the card. I couldn't touch it. I can't pay for that. I can't accept this." "It's not a gift," he said, his voice sharp. "It's a transaction. Emery saved my life. I value my life at considerably more than Anna Cantrell's retainer. The debt is paid. The matter is closed. You will go to the meeting." I looked at him, at this man who spoke of lawyers and poison in the same flat, emotionless tone. He was buying my life. He was buying me. But he was also handing me a weapon, a real one, a chance to fight Ryder and win. "Why?" I whispered. "Why are you doing this?" "Because," he said, his eyes on Emery, who was now happily drawing a picture of the pasta bowl. "I don't like bullies, and I don't like loose ends. Ryder is both." He drove us home himself. Emery, full of pasta, fell asleep in the back seat within 5 minutes. The silence in the car was different this time. It wasn't empty. It was charged, full of everything unsaid. I clutched the business card in my hand, the sharp edges digging into my palm. He pulled up to the curb outside my building. The same 2 guards were there, across the street. They didn't even look at the car. He turned off the engine. The sudden quiet was deafening. "Go to the meeting, Maya," he said, his voice low. I looked at him. At the hard line of his jaw, the dark, unreadable eyes. He wasn't a good man. He was a man who had people disappear. He was a man who spoke of betrayal and death as internal matters. But he was also the first person in 2 years who had offered me real help. He had fed my daughter. He had given me a weapon. He had seen me. I don't know why I did it. It wasn't a choice. It was an impulse, a broken, desperate, grateful impulse. I leaned across the center console. I put my hand on his jaw. The skin was warm, the stubble rough against my palm. He froze. He didn't pull away, but he didn't move. He just watched me, his eyes flaring with a sudden, dark fire. And I kissed him. My lips pressed against his. It was meant to be a thank you. It was meant to be small, but it wasn't. The second my mouth touched his, it was like a live wire. For 1/2 second, he was completely still, a statue of pure, controlled power. Then he responded. His hand came up, fast and hard and tangled in my hair, gripping the back of my head. It wasn't gentle. It was possessive. He didn't pull me closer. He anchored me. His mouth opened against mine, and the kiss went from a thank you to a claiming. It was heat and pressure and the faint, clean taste of coffee. It was demanding. It was a raw, bruising hunger that stunned me. A coiling, molten heat shot through my body, a feeling I hadn't felt in years. Maybe ever. I wasn't an object. I wasn't a victim. I was a participant. My hand gripped his shirt. "Are we home, Mommy?" Emery's sleepy voice from the back seat was a bucket of ice water. We broke apart, both of us breathing hard. I scrambled back to my side of the car, my face burning, my lips tingling. I couldn't look at him. I stared straight ahead at my own reflection in the dark windshield. "Maya," he said. His voice was a low growl, rough and unsteady. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I shouldn't have... Thank you. For the lawyer." I didn't wait for a reply. I fumbled for the door handle, climbed out of the car, and practically ripped the back door open. I unbuckled Emery, pulling her sleeping, warm body into my arms. I ran into the building and didn't look back. That night was a new kind of torture. I met with Anna Cantrell. She was a shark in a $4,000 suit. She looked at the pathetic pile of papers from my public defender and scoffed. "This isn't a legal defense. Mrs. Quinn," she'd said, her voice like clipped ice. "It's a surrender. We can fix this, but you will have to do exactly as I say." I walked out of her glass tower office with a stack of forms and the first terrifying sliver of hope I'd had in years. But the kiss, it was burned into my memory. The feel of his hand in my hair, the pressure of his mouth. I paced the small apartment while Emery slept, my skin feeling too tight. I was terrified of him. And now, I was terrified of me. It was late, maybe 1 a.m. I heard it, a shout, not a regular New York shout, an angry one, followed by a loud, metallic smash. I ran to the window, my heart trying to escape my chest. I peeked through the slit in the cheap blinds. A white van was parked halfway on the curb. 2 men. I knew them. Friends of riders. Vicious, empty-eyed men. One of them was smashing the glass of the building's front door with a baseball bat. The other was working on the lock with a crowbar. They were breaking in. They were coming for me. They were coming for Emery. I flew back from the window, my hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. I ran to Emery's room, my mind blank with panic. Where do we go? The fire escape. Then I heard it. More shouting. I crept back to the window. Luca's 2 guards were there. They had moved from the shadows, flanking the van. The man with the crowbar turned, his eyes wide. The first guard, a man built like a refrigerator, tackled him. A sick, wet crack echoed up as the man's head hit the pavement. He didn't move. The second man, the one with the bat, swung it wildly. "I'll kill you, you..." Luca's other guard moved like a snake. He ducked under the swing, moving inside. I saw something silver in his hand. Not a gun, a short, metal pipe. He struck the man in the knee. The man screamed, a high, thin sound of pure agony, and collapsed. The guard hit him again. A hard, downward strike to the man's ribs. It was over in 30 seconds. It was brutal. It was silent, save for the one scream. Ryder's men were on the ground, groaning. Luca's guards were pristine. One of them was on his phone, speaking in low, calm tones. I backed away from the window, my knees buckling. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, shaking so violently my teeth chattered. They would have gotten in. In another minute, they would have been in my apartment. My hope from the lawyer's office felt like a cruel joke. Ryder didn't need a court. If Luca's men hadn't been here, I would be dead. Or Emery would be gone. An hour passed, or maybe 2. I don't know. I sat on the floor listening. I heard sirens. Then they faded. The street went quiet. Then, a knock. Not the pounding of Ryder's men. Not the sharp rap of the police. A soft, firm thud, thud, thud. I knew instinctively who it was. I looked through the peephole. Luca. He was alone. He wasn't in a suit. He was in dark jeans and a black button-down shirt. Sleeves rolled up his forearms. He looked furious. I fumbled with the locks. 1, 2, 3. I opened the door. He was even more imposing in the narrow, dim hallway. He smelled like the cold night air, and whiskey, and a faint, cloying scent of cheap cologne, Ryder's cologne. He had seen him. He had gone from me to him. "Are you okay?" His voice was a low rumble. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. He looked past me, his eyes scanning the tiny, dark apartment. Emery. She's asleep. She didn't wake up. She didn't hear anything." He nodded, a sharp, curt movement. He stepped inside, just one step, and pushed the door closed behind him. My tiny entryway felt like it shrank to the size of a closet. He was too big, too much. He just looked at me. The violence rolling off him was a physical force. It was a storm contained in a human body. He was trembling with it. "He called you damaged goods," Luca said. His voice was raw, a vibration I felt in my bones. My breath hitched. He had confronted Ryder at the club. "He's wrong," Luca said. It was a statement of fact. I stood there, frozen, staring at his chest. I couldn't look him in the eyes. And then, the fear, the adrenaline, the relief, the shame. It all broke. A sob tore out of my chest, so violent it hurt. I clapped my hand over my mouth, my whole body shaking. "Maya!" He reached out, not fast but deliberately, and put his large, warm hands on my shoulders. He didn't pull me in. He just held me, grounded me. I sagged, leaning my forehead against his chest. I could feel the solid, steady thump, thump, thump of his heart. It was the only solid thing in the world. He smelled like whiskey and iron. We stood like that in the dark. Him, a pillar of contained rage. Me, a collapsing ruin. It was more intimate than the kiss. It was a terrifying, silent confession of protection. "You don't understand," I finally whispered, my voice muffled against his shirt. You don't know what he is, what he's capable of." "He's a coward," Luca growled. "He sends boys with bats to do his work. He's nothing." "No." I pulled back just enough to look up at him, my hands gripping his forearms. I had to make him see. I had to tell him the last, darkest part. "It's not me I'm afraid of. Luca, not really. It's Emery." His expression, already granite, hardened into something else, something I had never seen before. "What do you mean?" "About a year ago," I choked out, the words tasting like ash. "We were fighting. He was drunk. I said I was leaving. I had Emery packed. I tried to walk out. He grabbed me. He threw me against the wall." I was shaking again. The memory so vivid. And Emery? She was 7. She was so small. She ran at him. She started hitting his leg with her tiny little fists, screaming, "Leave my mommy alone! Leave her alone!" Luca's eyes closed. He turned around, and he laughed. He told her she needed to learn respect. My voice broke. "And he backhanded her. Luca, he hit my daughter. He hit her, and she flew. She hit the floor, and she was just quiet." I was sobbing now. Ugly, guttural sounds. The shame burned. I picked her up. I ran. I never went back, but that's what he holds over me. That's the secret. He told me. He told me if I ever told anyone, if I ever told the court that, he would make us disappear. He'd take her, and I would never, ever find her. And he would. He would finish what he started with her. He'd make sure she learned. I finished, gasping for air, the confession hanging in the tiny, dark hallway. Luca's hands tightened on my shoulders, his fingers digging in, almost painful. He held me steady, forcing me to meet his gaze. His eyes were open, and they were burning. They were not the eyes of a sad king, they were the eyes of a devil. He waited until my breathing evened out, until my sobs were just small, hitching gasps. "He will not touch you again," Luca said. His voice was not a comfort, it was a vow. It was a sentence. "And he will never touch your daughter again." He leaned down, his forehead pressing against mine. His breath was hot. "I promise you that, Maya, on my mother's grave, it will not happen again." And I, a woman who had been running for 2 years, a woman who trusted no one. I believed him. Luca didn't wait for my answer. He didn't wait for my terror to subside. He just nodded, as if my confession was the final piece of evidence he needed. "Pack a bag," he said, his voice flat, all the raw emotion gone, replaced by the chilling calm of command. "Just for a few days, essentials, medicine, your daughter's favorite toys. Nothing else. We leave in 10 minutes. "What? Where are we going?" "Somewhere he can't find you. Somewhere my men can do their job properly." He was already pulling his phone out, dialing. He turned his back to me, his voice dropping as he spoke rapidly in Italian. "Get the car, sublevel. Yes, the asset is compromised. Full relocation now." He hung up and looked at me. 10 minutes, Maya." I didn't argue. The terror of Ryder's men, of what they would have done, was still so fresh it was burning my lungs. I flew into Emery's room. She was still fast asleep, her breathing deep and even, oblivious to the violence that had unfolded just outside her window. I pulled her small backpack from the closet, stuffing in her toothbrush, her favorite pajamas, the new sketch pad, and her oldest, most loved stuffed bear. For myself, I grabbed my purse, my medication, a change of clothes, and stuffed them into a tote bag. It was pathetic. My entire life, packed in less than 5 minutes. Luca was waiting by the door. He didn't pace. He stood like a statue, watching, his presence filling the tiny, cramped space. When I was done, he moved into Emery's room. I tensed, but he just slid his arms, impossibly gentle, under her small body. Lifting her from the bed, she mumbled, her head lolling onto his shoulder, and she burrowed into his warmth, her breathing never hitching. He carried my daughter as if he had been doing it his entire life. "Let's go," he said, and walked out the door. I followed, not bothering to lock the 3 deadbolts behind me. There was no point. We didn't take the stairs. We didn't go out the front, where the shattered glass and the 2 groaning men were being loaded into an ambulance by uniformed police. Luca's men had, apparently, called it in, an anonymous tip about a mugging. Luca keyed a code into a panel I'd never noticed, and a service elevator door opened in the hall. We rode down in silence, the air thick and cold. We exited into a subterranean garage, a damp, concrete cavern I never knew existed. The black sedan was waiting, the engine purring. One of his men held the back door open. Luca slid Emery into the back seat, buckling her in himself, his large, careful hands moving with practiced efficiency. "Get in," he said to me. I got in beside her. He took the passenger seat. The driver, a man with a face like a closed fist, pulled out of the garage and into the night, leaving my entire world behind. The safe house was a glass box in the sky. It was a penthouse, occupying the entire top floor of a sleek, anonymous black skyscraper in a part of Manhattan so wealthy it didn't even have a name. The elevator opened directly into the apartment. My first thought was that no one lived here. It wasn't a home, it was a statement. The floors were polished white marble. The furniture was all low-slung, black leather and chrome. The kitchen was a gleaming expanse of stainless steel that looked like it had never seen a hot pan. And the walls were glass, floor to ceiling, 360-degree views of New York City, a glittering, indifferent carpet of light spread out below us. We were floating We were exposed. It's... Hi, I whispered, my voice sounding small in the vast, echoing space. The elevator is biometric, Lucas said, sliding Emery, still asleep, onto a massive, cloud-like sofa. The glass is 3 inches thick, bulletproof, bomb-proof. There is one way in and one way out, and I am the only one who has the key. You are safe here. Sicuro, I walked to the window, drawn by the terrifying, beautiful view. I could see the bridges, the rivers, the entire sleeping, dangerous city. I felt like I was in a cage, a beautiful, transparent cage, dangling over the lion's den. I don't belong here, Luca. You belong where I put you, he said, not unkindly. He pulled a blanket from the back of a chair and draped it over Emery. There are 3 bedrooms. Pick one. Food is in the fridge. I'll be in the study. He walked away, disappearing down a hallway, leaving me alone in the massive, silent room with my sleeping daughter. I hated it. I hated the cold marble, the sterile steel, the impersonal luxury that felt like a slap in the face. It was the kind of place Ryder dreamed about, the kind of power he wanted to project. But when Emery woke up the next morning, she gasped, her face pressing against the glass. "Mommy, we're in the sky, we're flying." She ran through the apartment, her socked feet sliding on the marble. She found the kitchen and her eyes went wide. The refrigerator was stocked, not with petty groceries. This was industrial. Cases of water, milk, juice, drawers full of fresh fruit, vegetables, cheese, meat, a pantry filled with every kind of cereal, pasta, and snack a child could imagine. "We can stay here forever," she yelled, her voice bouncing off the high ceilings. I felt a pang of guilt. I had been starving her, in my own way, keeping her in a world of stale cornflakes and fear. Here, in this cold, glass box, she felt free. For Emery's safety, I would accept the luxury. I would live in the cage. Luca was a ghost for the first 2 days. He was in the study, a room I didn't dare approach. I heard his voice. A low, constant murmur of Italian, occasionally rising in anger, then falling back to a deadly calm. He was on the phone. He was hunting. He was at war. I spent my time with Emery. We drew the city. We made pancakes in the sterile kitchen, and I felt guilty about the mess. We watched movies on a television that was the size of my old bedroom wall. On the 3rd afternoon, I found Luca in the main living room. He wasn't on the phone. He was on the floor. He was sitting cross-legged, his back to me, and Emery was sitting opposite him. Her new sketch pad was open on his lap. "But how do you make the shadow look real?" Emery was asking, her pencil hovering over her paper. "You don't draw the shadow," Luca said, his voice quiet. He took the pencil from her. "You draw the light around the shadow. See, the light hits the building here, so the dark has to be here. The shadow is just the part the light hasn't touched." He sketched, his large, rough hand moving with an artist's precision. He was good, really good. "Wow," Emery breathed. "You're like a real artist." "A long time ago," he murmured. He saw me. His body tensed for a fraction of a second, then relaxed. "Mommy, look, Luca is teaching me perspective." "I see that," I said, a small, hesitant smile on my face. "We are also doing our words," Emery announced proudly. She looked at Luca. "How do you say, 'Thank you for the pencils'?" "You say grazie. Grazie per le matite." "Grazie," Emery repeated, her pronunciation perfect. And what was the word from the elevator? The one you said to me?" Luca's gaze flickered to mine. His expression was unreadable. "Sicuro," he said, his voice soft. "It means safe." "Sicuro," Emery whispered, trying the word on her tongue. "I like that. Sicuro." She looked at him, her small face serious. "You're my Sicuro, Luca." Luca's hand, the one holding the pencil, stopped. He didn't breathe. He just stared at her. He looked, for one split second, like the boy in the photograph, lost, overwhelmed. He cleared his throat, breaking the spell, and handed her back the pencil. "Go draw the bridge. Show me the shadows." Emery scrambled off, running to the window, and Luca stood up. He watched her for a moment, his face a mask of complicated, warring emotions. "She's a smart kid," he said, his back still to me. "She's trusting," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "She's been through a lot. She attaches quickly to people who are protective." He turned to me. The mask was back. "The commander, the boss. She's safe. Maya. That's all that matters." "Is she?" I asked, my new courage warring with my old fear. "Are we? You're a ghost. You're locked in that room. You're at war. You brought the war here." "The war was already at your door," he said, his voice sharp. "I just moved you to better ground." "And what happens when they find this ground, Luca? They betrayed you at the restaurant. Ryder's men found my apartment. You're not infallible." His eyes turned to black ice. "You're right." His phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket, his thumb swiping across the screen. He read the message, and I watched all the color drain from his face, leaving a pale, terrifying rage. "Marco," he growled. "What? Who's Marco?" "My lieutenant." His voice was a low, vicious snarl. "The one who was supposed to be running the internal investigation. He's gone." "Gone? Like, quit?" "Gone," Luca repeated, his eyes locking on mine. "Vanished. His car is at the airport. His apartment is empty. And a data file containing the locations of all my private properties, including this one, is missing from his personal safe." My blood went cold. He betrayed you. He's the one from the restaurant. He's the one." Luca's hand clenched the phone so tightly I thought the screen would crack. "He gave them the poison. He gave them you. And now, he has given them this." He didn't shout. He didn't pace. He just stood there, vibrating with a lethal energy that was more terrifying than any explosion. He was a man watching his world burn down, and the only thing he could think about was who lit the match. "We have to go," I said, my voice shaking as I grabbed for Emery. "Now." "No." "What do you mean, no? He knows. Luca, he knows where we are." "He doesn't know when," Luca said, his voice a deadly calm. "He doesn't know that I know. Not yet. We have a few hours, maybe a day, before he acts, before he sells this location to the highest bidder. So what are we going to do? Wait for them?" "No," he said. "I'm going to make a call, and I'm going to end this. You and Emery, stay away from the windows." That night, sleep was impossible. I put Emery to bed in the room furthest from the living area, but the apartment, for all its size, felt small, suffocating. The glass walls felt thin as paper. Every light from the city below felt like a sniper's scope. I found him in the living room at 3 a.m. The city was a quiet, glittering tapestry. But he wasn't looking at it. He was standing in the dark, the phone to his ear, his back to the room. "I don't care what it costs," he was saying, his voice a low, lethal rasp. "Find him. Find Marco. I don't want him brought in. I don't want him questioned. I just want him gone. Capisci?" There was a pause. "I know he has a family," Luca snapped. "They are not our concern. He made his choice." He hung up, a savage finality in the movement. He stood there, his shoulders slumped, one hand rubbing the back of his neck. He was a man carrying a mountain. "He's just a man," I said from the darkness. Luca spun, his hand flying inside his jacket. He relaxed when he saw me, but his posture was still coiled, dangerous. "I told you to stay in your room." "You're ordering a man's death," I whispered, walking toward him. I wasn't afraid, not of him, not anymore. I was aching for him. "I'm cleaning up a mess," he said harshly, turning back to the window. "He was your friend, wasn't he, Marco? You trusted him." "Trust," Luca spat the word, "is a liability. It's a word for children and fools. He was a soldier. He broke his oath. He pays the price." "And what price do you pay?" He turned to me then, his eyes burning in the dim light. "What do you want from me, Maya? Pity? You want me to tell you I'm a good man? I'm not. I'm the man who put you in this glass box. I'm the man who has men with guns sitting in your old hallway. I am a monster." "No," I said, stopping just a foot from him. "A monster wouldn't be teaching a little girl how to draw. A monster wouldn't be in this much pain." His control snapped. He slammed his fist against the steel frame of the window. The sound was a dull, heavy thud that echoed in the silence. "Pain?" he growled. "This isn't pain. This is a cost. This is the business I was born into. This is the poison I drink every day." "You don't have to," I whispered, and I did the only thing I could think of. I reached out and put my hand on his chest. His heart was hammering, a wild, frantic rhythm against my palm. He was a storm trapped in a suit. He looked down at my hand, then up at my face. His eyes were wide, black, and full of a raw vulnerability that stole my breath. "Don't," he whispered. "Don't. Be kind to me, Maya. I don't deserve it, and I don't know what to do with it." "You don't have to do anything," I said, my other hand coming up to cup his jaw, just as I had in the car. This time, he didn't freeze. He leaned into my touch, a desperate, shuddering sigh leaving his body. His eyes closed. "They're all traitors," he murmured, his voice broken. "In the end, they all turn, or they all die." "I won't," I said. His eyes opened. He searched my face, looking for the lie, the angle. "I won't betray you, Luca. I won't run. I'm right here." He kissed me. It wasn't the hard, claiming kiss from the car. It wasn't the violent hunger. This was a drowning. This was a man going under, and I was his last breath of air. His mouth was soft, hesitant, desperate. His hands came up to grip my waist, pulling me against him, and I went, melting into his body. He was all hard muscle and trembling energy. I kissed him back, pouring all the fear, all the gratitude, all the strange, terrifying warmth I felt for him into it. I was anchoring him, just as he had anchored me. His hands moved from my waist, one sliding up my back, pulling me closer, the other tangling in my hair, tilting my head. The kiss deepened, becoming a slow, searching, deliberate exploration. It was a question. "Are you sure?" I answered by wrapping my arms around his neck, pulling him down, my body flush against his. It was a yes. He broke the kiss, his forehead resting against mine. We were both breathing hard. "Maya," he whispered, his voice rough with an emotion I couldn't name. It was deeper than desire. It was need. "I'm here," I whispered back. He didn't say another word. He slid one arm under my legs, lifting me as if I weighed nothing, and carried me from the living room. He carried me to his room, a dark, monastic space with a massive bed and the same glass walls. He didn't turn on the lights. The city glittered around us as he laid me on the cool, soft sheets. He stood over me for a moment, a tall, dark shadow against the lights, and he began to unbutton his shirt. My heart was pounding, but I wasn't afraid. For the first time, I felt chosen. I felt wanted, not for what I could be forced to do, but for me. He came down to me, his hands slow, his mouth gentle. He kissed my jaw, my neck, the hollow of my throat. Every touch was a question. Every soft breath against my skin was a discovery. "You are not damaged goods," he growled against my collarbone, his voice thick. "You are, Tutto, everything." He was slow. He was patient. He was a man unlearning a lifetime of distrust. He touched me with a reverence that made me want to weep. He was memorizing me. The curve of my hip, the skin of my stomach, the taste of my mouth, and I held him. I ran my hands over his strong back, his powerful shoulders. I explored the man who had been a monster, and who was now, in the darkness, just Luca. When he finally came inside me, it was a slow, deliberate joining, a unification. It was warmth and trust and a profound emotional release that shattered every wall I had. He held me, whispering my name, his breath hot against my ear, and I clung to him as the world fell away, leaving only the two of us, safe in our glass box in the sky. We were asleep, that deep, boneless sleep that only comes after a profound release. Whoosh! Crash! My eyes snapped open. A bright, flickering orange light was dancing on the bedroom walls. Luca was out of the bed before I had even registered the sound. He was at the window in an instant, naked, his body silhouetted against a sudden, violent bloom of fire from the alley below. "Get on the floor," he commanded, His voice the cold, flat blade of the boss. I scrambled from the bed as he grabbed his phone. "What is it? What's happening?" "Molotov, in the service alley, right below us." He was already dialing. They knew. They knew which apartment. They're sending a message. "What message?" I whispered, my blood turning to ice. Luca looked at me, his face illuminated by the flickering flames, and his expression was something beyond rage. It was a cold, absolute certainty. "Get out," he said, "or she dies." We didn't have 10 minutes this time. We had 10 seconds. He threw clothes at me. "Get dressed. Get Emery. Don't speak. Don't ask questions. Just move." I ran, my heart in my throat, to Emery's room. She was stirring from the noise. "Mommy, what's that light?" "Fire, baby, we have to go. It's a game. A quiet game." I pulled her from the bed, grabbing her backpack, and ran back to the living room. Luca was dressed, strapping a gun to his ankle. The driver from the other night was there, in the elevator, holding the door. "Sub-level 4, Luca snapped. "Go." We were in the elevator, a steel box dropping 30 stories, when I heard it, the thud, thud, thud of a helicopter. "They're on the roof," I whispered. "I know," Luca said. "They're too late." The doors opened onto a different garage, colder, darker. A single, dusty-looking truck sat in the corner. Luca threw us in the back, got in the driver's seat, and we tore out of the garage, leaving the glass box and the war behind us. We drove for hours, north. Away from the city, the sun was coming up as we turned off the main highway onto a smaller road, and then onto a long, gravel driveway hidden by a thick canopy of trees. The house was stone, old, covered in ivy. It looked like it had grown from the earth itself. It was a fortress of a different kind, solid, ancient, permanent. An older woman, dressed in black, her gray hair in a tight bun, was waiting on the steps. She looked at Luca, then at me, then at the sleepy, confused Emery in my arms. Her face was a mask of disapproval. "Sophia," Luca said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "My guests, Maya Quinn and her daughter, Emery. They will be staying in the East Wing. See that they are comfortable. And no one knows they are here." Sophia nodded, her dark eyes lingering on me. "Of course. Luca, the family home is always safe. The family home." It was days before the story came out. Sophia, the housekeeper, was a fortress of loyalty, but she was also a woman. She watched me, her suspicion softening as she saw me with Emery. As she saw me watching Luca, he was different here. The house. It was his skin. He was still a commander, still on the phone, but the cold rage was banked, replaced by a heavy, quiet grief. I found the room by accident. It was at the end of the hall. It wasn't locked. It was a bedroom. But it was a shrine. The furniture was old, feminine, covered in dust cloths. On the mantelpiece was a photograph of a woman with a bright, beautiful, tragic smile. She had Luca's eyes. His mother, Isabella. I jumped. Sophia was standing in the doorway, a stack of clean towels in her arms. "She was very beautiful," I said. "She was," Sophia said, her voice softening. "She loved this house. She hated the city. She hated the life. His father, Luca's father, he swore he would keep her safe. That the business would never touch her." Sophia walked in, running a hand over the dusty frame. "But it did. A rival family. They wanted to send a message. They put a bomb in her car. Here, in this driveway. Luca was 12. He was watching from that window." I felt the air leave my lungs. I looked at the window, at the peaceful, sunlit driveway. "He never forgave his father," Sophia whispered. "He never trusted anyone again, especially women. He said they were a weakness, a vulnerability, that to love someone was to give your enemy a weapon." She looked at me, her dark eyes seeing right through me. "He brought you here, to his mother's house. He has never done that. Ever." I understood. The walls, the control, the coldness. It was all armor. It was the desperate, lonely work of a 12-year-old boy still watching a car burn. The next day, I was sitting on the porch, watching Emery run on the vast, green lawn. It was the first time I'd seen her just be a kid. Running for the sake of running, Luca came out. He sat in the chair next to me. We sat in silence for a long time, watching her. The peace was thick, fragile. Emery, spotting him, ran over. Her cheeks flushed, her hair wild. She stopped in front of his chair, her chest heaving. "Luca?" she panted. "Yes, Piccolina?" he said, the shadow of a smile on his face. Mommy said my old dad was bad, that he went away, and that you're protecting us." Luca's smile faded. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. I just nodded, my heart pounding. "And," Emery continued, "Anna, the lawyer lady, she said Mommy is going to win, that I'm going to stay with Mommy forever." "That's right," Luca said, his voice quiet. "So," Emery took a deep breath, "if my old dad is gone, and you're here, are you going to be my real dad now?" The world stopped. The birds, the wind, my own heart. Luca went completely, utterly still. The blood drained from his face. He looked stricken, gutted. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He looked at me, his eyes wide, full of a raw, terrified panic I had never seen. He was a man who could order a death, who could face down poison and betrayal, and this 9-year-old girl had just disarmed him with a single, honest question. I held my breath. He looked back at Emery. He swallowed, his throat working. He couldn't answer. He was speechless. And in that moment, watching him, terrified and broken and utterly, completely affected, I knew I wasn't just grateful to him. I wasn't just attracted to him. It was too late and I was in love with him. We were a family, a broken, terrified, hunted family, living on borrowed time. But we were a family. And I knew, as I looked at the man who was still staring at my daughter, unable to speak, that the threat looming over us wasn't just from Ryder or Marco. It was from the world he was trying to leave and the love he was terrified to accept. The answer to Emery's question never came. Luca just froze. He was a man chiseled from stone, and her innocent, terrifying question was the hammer blow that had finally found a crack. He looked at me, his eyes wide and black with a panic so profound it looked like grief. A man who commanded an army, who had faced down death in a wine glass, was rendered utterly speechless by a 9-year-old girl asking for a father. He didn't answer, and he couldn't. He just cleared his throat, a rough, scraping sound, and stood up. He looked down at Emery, his face a mask of such internal conflict it was painful to watch. He started. "I have to make a call." He turned and walked back into the house, into the fortress of his father's study, and closed the heavy oak door behind him. The click was as final as a gunshot. Emery's face fell. He's mad." "No, baby." I knelt, pulling her into a hug. "He's not mad. He's just surprised. It was a big question." "Oh," she said, her voice small, as she leaned her head on my shoulder. I like him. He makes me feel securo. He makes me feel safe." I held her, my own heart aching, and I watched the closed door. "I know, baby. Me too." For the next 2 weeks, the armor was back. Luca transformed the quiet, ivy-covered estate into a war room. He was hunting. The man who had vanished, Marco, was still in the wind. But Luca's rage was colder now, more focused. He was on the phone from dawn until long past midnight. Speaking in low, rapid Sicilian, he was launching a silent, internal purge. He was cutting out the rot, and he was doing it with a surgical, merciless precision. He was polite to me, distant. He was gentle with Emery, but he avoided being alone with her. He was avoiding the question he still couldn't answer. The man who had kissed me in the glass penthouse, the man who had trembled in my arms, was gone. The boss was back. I felt lost. I was a ghost in his mother's house, watching the man I loved retreat from me. I was safe from Ryder, but I was trapped in a new kind of isolation. I found myself back in Isabella's room, the dust-covered shrine. Sophia, the housekeeper, now left it open for me. She seemed to understand I needed to be there. I picked up the silver-framed photograph of her, the one from her wedding day. She was so young, smiling at a man I presumed was Luca's father. Her smile was wide, bright, and utterly unguarded. She had Luca's eyes, but her heart was on her sleeve. She hadn't learned to build walls yet. She was beautiful, wasn't she? I jumped, turning. Luca was standing in the doorway, his suit jacket off, his tie loosened. He looked exhausted. The shadows under his eyes were dark, permanent. Yes, I whispered. She was... You look so much like her. He walked in, his feet silent on the thick rug. He stood next to me, staring at the photo. I have her eyes. I have my father's curse. What curse? This. He gestured around the room, at the house, at the unseen guards patrolling the perimeter, the business, the life. He promised her she would be safe. He promised her the poison wouldn't touch her. He reached out, his finger tracing the outline of her face on the glass. Love is a liability, Maya. It's a weapon you hand to your enemies. They used her to break my father, and they will use you. They will use her to break me. My heart broke. Not for me, for him, for the 12-year-old boy still standing at the window, watching the flames. That's not true, I said, my voice fierce. That's only true if you treat us like a liability, if you hide us, if you lock us away. I turned to face him. I'm not a weakness. Luca, I'm not your mother. I am not a victim to be protected. I'm your partner. He looked at me, his eyes full of a deep, ancient sorrow. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. I'm the one who saw the poison. Emery is the one who spoke. We're not your vulnerability. Luca, we're your strength. If you'd just let us be. He didn't have an answer for that either. The real world burst into our stone fortress 3 days later. My lawyer, Anna Cantrell, called. She was a shark, and she had tasted blood. We have him, Maya, she said, her voice crisp and triumphant. Ryder's public defender is trying to cut a deal, but his case is collapsing. We have the testimony from Luca's men, the ones who stopped the break-in. We have the financial records. The judge scheduled a mandatory video mediation for tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Ryder will be there. I will be there. And you need to be there. This is it. This is where we end it. My stomach turned to ice. A video call? With him? It's the only way. I want him to see you. I want him to see you're not scared anymore. We're going for full, sole custody, and the immediate termination of all parental rights. We're going to bury him. I hung up and went to find Luca. He was in the study, a map of the city spread across his desk. He heard my news, and his face hardened. No. What do you mean, no? Anna said it's mandatory. I don't care, he said, his voice flat. It's a risk. A video call? It's a digital trace. It's an opening. He could be anywhere. He could be with anyone. You are not doing it. Luca, this is my life. This is Emery. This is the chance you gave me. The chance to finally, legally cut him out. I have to do this. You said you trusted Anna. He stared at the map, his jaw working. He was at war with himself. The boss versus the man? Fine, he finally growled. You'll do it, but you'll do it here. In this room, my tech team will scrub the connection. We'll route it through a dozen proxies. He won't find you. I'll be in the corner. Off camera, he won't see me. He won't hear me, but I will be here. Am I clear? Clear, I whispered. A wave of relief so strong my knees went weak. The next morning, the study was a command center. A laptop was set up on the massive desk. A man I'd never seen, Sal, a tech specialist with nervous eyes, was tapping away, muttering about firewalls. Luca stood in the far corner, by the window, his arms crossed. He was a statue of pure, contained violence. He wore a simple black shirt, and I could see the hard outline of the gun holstered under his arm. We're live, Sal said. Anna Cantrell's face appeared, sharp and professional. Maya, you're ready? I nodded, my mouth dry. Okay, he's joining. A new window popped up, and there he was, Ryder. He was in a dark room, a single bare bulb hanging over his head. He looked terrible, thin, sallow. His eyes were wide, paranoid, darting around. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a rat-like, desperate energy. Maya, he sneered, but his voice was weak. Look at you. Playing princess in a castle somewhere? You think you're better than me? Hello, Ryder, I said, amazed at how steady my voice was. Anna had coached me. Do not engage. Do not react. Be a stone wall. You ruined me, he spat. You and your friend. You think he's going to stick around? He's just using you. Damaged goods. That's what you are. That's all you'll ever be. I saw Luca flinch in the corner, a small, tightening movement of his hand. We are here to discuss the custody of Emery Quinn. Mr. Flynn, Anna's voice cut in, sharp as a razor. We have an offer for you to consider. I want to see her, Ryder demanded, his eyes wide and frantic. I'm her father. I have a right. You can't keep her from me. Mommy? Oh, God, no. The study door creaked open. Emery stood there, her stuffed bear in her hand, her hair messy from sleep. Mommy, Sophia said you were in here. She saw the screen. She saw him. She froze. Emery, Ryder whispered. His face changed. A sickly, possessive smile spread across his lips. Hey, princess, look at you. You're getting so big. You miss me. You miss your old dad? Emery didn't speak. She just stared, her small face pale. She took a step back, hiding behind my chair. Luca in the corner was pure, white-hot rage. He took one step forward into the light. Who the hell is that? Ryder snarled. Before Luca could speak, Emery tilted her head. She was listening, not to Ryder, to his background. A sound, faint but clear, came through the laptop speakers. A deep, heavy, metallic clang. A pause, and then again, clang. Mommy? Emery whispered, her eyes wide. That's the clock. The big, loud clock. What, baby? From the field trip, the big clock by the water, the one that hurt my ears, by the boat place, on the screen. Ryder's face went white with panic. He knew. He heard her. He slammed the laptop shut. The screen went black. I looked at Luca. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Sal. Did you hear that? The bell? I heard it, Sal said, his fingers flying, cross-referencing the audio signature. Red Hook. It's the old customs house clock. It chimes every 15 minutes. You got the trace? Luca's voice was a low, deadly growl. He cut it, Sal said, but I had it. It was routed through a city server, but the origin, Warehouse 7, off Van Brunt Street. He wasn't lying, boss. The connection. It pinged a city-issued router. It's registered to a Sergeant Frank Donovan, NYPD. A corrupt cop. Luca breathed. He looked at me, his eyes black. He's not just hiding, he's protected. He was already moving. He grabbed his suit jacket, pulling it on. Luca, what are you doing? I asked, my heart hammering. I'm ending this, he said, checking the clip in his gun. I'm cutting out the cancer. You're going to kill him, I whispered. It wasn't a question. He looked at me. He hurt your daughter. He threatened you. He put you in that restaurant. He is the loose end. He is the reason they found you. This is the only way to be sure. He dies tonight. No. He stopped, his hand on the doorknob. What did you say? I said no. I stood up, my legs shaking, but I blocked his path. You can't, I won't let you. He stared at me, his disbelief turning to cold anger. Get out of my way, Maya. No, I want him to pay. I want him in a cage. I want him to spend the rest of his miserable life in a cell, thinking about what he lost. I want justice. Luca, not blood. If you go there and you kill him in cold blood, you're not better than him. You're just another monster, the same as him. The air in the room crackled. His rage was a physical thing, pressing against me. You, he growled. Do not understand my world. You don't understand what it takes to keep you safe. In my world, we don't ask the cancer to leave. We don't hope the system works. We burn it out. We kill it before it spreads. That is the only way. That's not my world, I cried, tears of frustration and fear blurring my vision. And it's not Emery's. What kind of future are we supposed to have with you? A future where any problem, any person you don't like, just disappears? A future where my daughter's real dad is a killer? I am protecting you, he roared, his voice bouncing off the stone walls. No, I shouted back. jabbing a finger at his chest. "You're protecting yourself. You're too afraid to try a different way. You're too afraid to trust the system, to trust me. It's easier for you to kill. It's easier to be the monster. It's the easy way out. You're a coward. Luca, you're a coward for only choosing vengeance." The word hung in the air. Coward. It hit him like a physical blow. His face went white. The rage vanished, replaced by something cold, something broken. He looked at me as if I had just stabbed him. He didn't speak. He didn't move for a full 10 seconds. Then, very slowly, he stepped around me. He didn't touch me. He walked out of the study. I heard his footsteps in the hall. The heavy front door opened, and then it closed. I was left alone in the silence, the echo of my own words ringing in my ears. "Oh, God," I whispered, sliding down the wall. What did I do? He was gone. A full day, 24 hours of agonizing, suffocating silence. I paced the stone floors. I called his phone. It went straight to voicemail. I asked Sophia. She just shook her head, her face grim. "He's gone. Signora, this is what he does. He'd left me. I had pushed him too far. I had called him a coward, and he had left. He went to kill Ryder, and he wasn't coming back. Maybe the cop, maybe there was a shootout, maybe he was arrested, maybe he was dead, or maybe he just walked away from me. I was a fool. I was a fool to believe. I was a fool to fall in love with a man like him. I had finally found safety, and I had thrown it away because I wanted him to be a better man. I didn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the cold, dark window, watching the sun come up on the second day. I was a wreck. I heard the door. That heavy oak thud. I flew from the kitchen, my heart in my throat. He was there. Standing in the foyer, he looked wrecked. He was wearing the same clothes from yesterday. His hair was matted, he was covered in grime, and he smelled like the city, like river water and rain and old concrete. But he was whole. Luca. I breathed, my hand flying to my mouth. He looked at me. His eyes were hollow, exhausted. He looked defeated. "Turn on the television," he said, his voice a low rasp. I fumbled for the remote in the living room. The local morning news was on. In a stunning development, the NYPD's Internal Affairs, acting on an anonymous tip, raided a warehouse in Red Hook early this morning. They arrested decorated Sergeant Frank Donovan for corruption, and with him, they found fugitive Ryder Flynn. Flynn, wanted for questioning in several violent assaults, was also found in possession of... The screen showed Ryder, handcuffed, his face a mask of furious disbelief, being shoved into the back of a police car. He was screaming, but I couldn't hear the sound. I turned, my hand over my mouth, and looked at Luca. "How?" "Anonymous evidence," he said, his voice dead. "Security footage from the club when he confronted me. Bank statements from the corrupt cop, detailing payoffs, a persuaded confession from one of the men who attacked your building. He was very happy to trade his boss for a reduced sentence. Anna Cantrell delivered the entire anonymous package to a district attorney she trusts." I stared at him. You didn't kill him." "No." He finally looked at me, and his gaze was heavy, full of a pain I didn't understand. "I did it your way. I trusted the system." He said the words like they tasted like poison. It was harder, much harder than killing him. "You came back," I whispered, the tears finally coming, tears of relief. "You called me a coward," and he said, his voice flat. "I was wrong," I whispered, walking toward him. I stopped, inches from him. "I was so wrong that was the bravest thing you've ever done." I reached up, my hand trembling, and touched his face. The stubble was rough. He flinched, but he didn't pull away. He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch as if he was collapsing. It was agony. "Maya," he whispered, "to sit there, to watch, to let them take him, to not finish it." "I know," I said, my thumb stroking his cheek. "I know." I led him upstairs. He followed, a giant, exhausted man, his power suddenly gone. He was just Luca. In my room, not his. I sat him on the bed. I knelt, pulling off his damp, filthy boots. I tugged his grimy shirt from his pants. He let me, his hands limp at his sides. He was just watching me, his eyes full of a new, raw, terrifying trust. When I had him stripped down to his pants, I saw the bruises, a dark, angry purple over his ribs. "What happened?" I gasped. "The cop. He didn't want to come quietly," Luca murmured. "He didn't see me. I had to convince him to stay put until his friends arrived. He had been there. He had fought. But he had waited." "Oh, Luca." I kissed his chest, right over his heart, my tears falling on his skin. His hand came up, tangling in my hair. "Maya!" His voice was rough, broken, this time. I whispered, looking up at him. "It's not about fear. It's not about gratitude. It's just you and me." He pulled me up, and his mouth found mine. It wasn't a desperate claiming or a slow seduction. It was a promise, a homecoming. It was a man who had walked through hell and found something on the other side. He laid me back on the bed, and his movements were slow, deliberate. He memorized me with his hands, his mouth. He was a man who had been starving. He looked at me, his dark eyes vulnerable, open. He was seeing me. Not a liability, not a victim, his partner. When we came together, it was a slow, deep, perfect joining. He held my face between his hands, his thumbs stroking my cheeks, his eyes locked on mine. It was a silent vow, a full-body confession. He was giving me the one thing he had never given anyone, his trust. We lay tangled in the sheets for hours, the afternoon sun warming the room. "I'm tired," he said, his voice muffled in my hair. "I know," I whispered, my hand stroking his back. "No, Maya, I'm tired of this. The killing, the betrayals, the poison." He lifted his head, his gaze serious, clear. "This, you, Emery, this is life. The other thing is just my father's legacy. It's my mother's grave." He sat up, pulling me with him. "I want out. I want a life, a real one." My heart stopped. Can you just walk away?" "I don't know," he said, his honesty absolute. "It's not a company you quit, but I have to try. You showed me a different way, Maya, a harder way, I think. I think I want to be the man you thought I was, the man you called brave." I cried, then a real, hopeful, joyful cry. He held me, and for the first time, I let myself believe we had a future. The next few weeks were a dream. Ryder was convicted. With the testimony from the corrupt cop and his own men, he was buried. Anna Cantrell was ruthless. He was gone. Forever, I won. I had full, sole, permanent custody of Emery. The threat was over. We decided on it was time for Emery to be a kid. We found a small, private school in the town nearby. It was exclusive, quiet, and very, very secure. Luca had 2 men, plain clothes, watching it from a discreet distance. "She'll be fine. Luca?" I laughed, holding his hand. "I know," he said, but his jaw was tight. I don't like it. She needs to be a kid." I insisted. "We need to be normal." It was her first day. I was waiting at the front gate, just like all the other mothers. The 3:00 bell rang. The old iron gates opened. Children poured out, laughing, shouting, backpacks swinging, blonde hair, brown hair, red hair, no dark pigtails. My smile faded. My stomach turned to lead. Emery? The crowd thinned. The yard was empty. "No." My breath hitched. No. I ran past the gate, into the school. A teacher, the one from Emery's class, was tidying up. "Mrs. Quinn? What's wrong?" "Where is she?" I yelled, my voice a frantic, high-pitched thing. "Where is Emery?" The teacher's face went pale. What do you mean? Her uncle picked her up. Not 10 minutes ago, right before the bell. He had the authorization card you signed. I don't have an uncle." "What authorization?" The older gentleman. He was so nice. He said you were stuck in traffic. He had the card, Mr. Marco. My blood didn't just go cold. It evaporated. My knees buckled. Maya, Luca's voice. He was early. He ran up the steps, his face tight with concern. He saw my face. He knew. "Where is she?" he commanded. He took her. I sobbed, collapsing against him. "Luca. Marco. Marco was here. He took her." Luca's face went white, a pure, ashen, terrifying white. He held me up, his voice a low, animalistic growl. "Sal, get me eyes! Now, now!" His men were already moving, shouting into phones. "Boss?" One of the guards, the one who had been across the street, ran up. He was holding a piece of paper. It was on the gate. We thought it was a school notice. Luca ripped it from his hand. It was a single, folded sheet of paper. He opened it. I looked. It was scrawled in something thick and wet and red. "Table 12 wasn't your last warning." The note wasn't a warning. It was a victory lap. The red scrawl, the thick, wet ink of it. It was blood. My daughter's blood? I didn't know. I didn't care. The world didn't go silent or slow down. It exploded. "Sal?" Luca's voice was not a human sound. It was a roar, a noise ripped from the throat of an animal. He grabbed the teacher by the arms, his grip so tight she cried out. "The card, the authorization card, where is it? The office, the main file?" she stammered. Luca was already moving, dragging the woman with him. I was just numb. My body was hollow, a shell. He took her. He took my baby. My legs gave out. I didn't hit the floor. Luca's other guard, the one named Antonio, caught me. "Not here, Signora," he said, his voice firm, lifting me. "We go. The boss is handling it." "He took her," I whispered. "He took her. We will get her back." It was a promise, but my heart didn't hear it. The drive back to the stone house was a blur of silent, screaming terror. Luca sat in the passenger seat, his phone pressed to his ear, his back rigid. He had transformed, the man who had struggled with a child's question, the man who had shown me his bruises and his trust. He was gone. He had been burned away. In his place was the king, the monster, the capo. "I want every man we have," he said, his voice a low, lethal vibration. "Every associate, every informant, I want the 5 boroughs shut down. I want Ryder Flynn's entire network pulled apart, piece by piece, until I find the link. And I want Nico Barone's face on every street. I want to know where he is. I want to know where he breathes. Find him. Find him now." He hung up and was silent. The silence was worse than the shouting. "Luca," I whispered from the back seat. "Luca, he used a card. He used your name. Marco." "It wasn't Marco," he said, his voice dead, his eyes fixed on the road. "Marco was a lieutenant. He was a coward. He ran. He wouldn't have the courage to do this. This is a message. This is..." An insider, someone deep, someone who knew about Marco. Someone who knew Marco's name would get him past the guards. Someone close. I breathed. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. We got back to the house. It was no longer a home, a refuge. It was a military compound. Dark cars lined the gravel drive. Men with hard faces and guns under their jackets patrolled the lawn. They all nodded as Luca swept past, their eyes full of fear and loyalty. Luca went to the study. He locked the door. I was left in the massive living room. Sophia, the housekeeper, brought me a glass of brandy. My hand was shaking so hard I couldn't drink it. "He will find her, Signora," Sophia said, her voice quiet. "He is his father's son, but he is his mother's heart. He will not fail. He took her. Sophia, because of me, because I was his weakness." "No," Sophia said, her dark eyes sharp. "You are his reason. There is a difference. Now, you let him hunt, and you must think. Think. I can't breathe. Think," she insisted. "This man, this traitor. He used your past. He used Ryder. He used Marco. These are not separate things. They are a chain. You know part of this chain. Go back. Look." She was right. Sitting here, shattering, was what he wanted. It was what Ryder would have wanted. No, my grief, my terror. It crystallized. It turned into a single, cold, hard point of rage. He put his hands on my daughter. I would not be a liability. I would be a weapon. I ran to my room. I grabbed my old phone. The one with the cracked screen. I grabbed my laptop. I had wiped most of Ryder from my life, but the cloud never forgot. I sat at the kitchen table, the brandy untouched, and I began to dig. I wasn't just looking for Ryder, I was looking for a connection, a link, a moment in time when Ryder's pathetic, vicious little world had touched Luca's. Hours passed. I looked at old text messages, a constant stream of abuse and threats from Ryder. I looked at old bank statements, seeing the payments he'd made to his low-life friends. Nothing. Then, photos. Old photos from before I'd left him. Parties, clubs. Ryder, always trying to look like a big shot, his arm slung around some other thug. I scrolled back. 2 years, 3. A Christmas party. A gaudy, loud, terrible party at some rented club. Ryder had crashed it. He'd been trying to make connections. I was there. I was in the background, by the bar, my face pale, my smile thin and forced. I remembered that night. I had been so scared. Ryder had been so volatile. I zoomed in on the photo. Ryder was at a table. He was laughing, that fake, barking laugh. He was talking to a man, an older man, well-dressed, a heavy gold ring on his pinky. The man was smiling, a paternal, amused smile, a glass of red wine in his hand. I knew him. I had seen him in this house, in Luca's study. Nico Barone, Luca's oldest friend, his uncle. The man who had been his father's consigliere, the man who had been running the entire hunt for Marco. "No," I whispered. My blood ran cold. It wasn't Marco. It wasn't just an insider. It was family. I looked closer. Ryder, a small-time, arrogant fool. Nico Barone, the power behind the throne. They knew each other. 2 years ago. The chain, Nico knew Ryder. Nico knew Ryder was my ex. Nico used Ryder's men to set me up, to force me to be at table 10. He needed me there. He needed a civilian, a distraction. He orchestrated the poisoning. He used Marco as the scapegoat, leaking his name just enough. And when Ryder failed, when Ryder was arrested, Nico had to clean up his own loose end. He had to silence the one person left who could connect us all. My daughter. I ran to the study. I didn't knock. I slammed the door open. Luca was standing over his desk, a phone in each hand, his face a mask of cold fury. "I don't care what he's offering. I will—" He saw my face. He stopped. "Get out." "No." I threw my phone on his desk. The picture was still on the screen. "Look." He glanced down, annoyed. Then he froze. He dropped the phones. He picked up my phone. He stared at the picture of Nico and Ryder, laughing together. "When?" he said, his voice a low, hollow sound. 2 years ago, a Christmas party Ryder crashed. He knew him. Luca. He knew him all along. Luca backed away from the desk until he hit the wall. He slid down, slowly, until he was sitting on the floor. He put his head in his hands. "Nico," he whispered. It was a sound of such profound betrayal it was a death rattle. He was my father's. He taught me to ride a bike. He used Ryder, I said, the pieces clicking into place, cold and sharp. He used Ryder to put me at the restaurant. The poisoning. It was all him. Marco must have reported to him. Nico was the head of the snake. He wanted you dead. He wanted my throne, Luca whispered, his voice ravaged. He said I was weak. He said, when I told him I was getting out, he told me I was spitting on my father's grave. He said I was being weak. For you. He looked up at me, his eyes broken. He did this. He took her to prove I was weak, to break me. Then we will find her, I said, my voice shaking with a new, cold fury. Where? Luca. Where would a man like that go? A man who thinks he's the true king. A man who loves the old way. Before Luca could answer, Sal, the tech, burst into the room, his face pale. Boss, I don't know what this is. I had a dead trace on Marco's burner phone, the one that went missing. I assumed Nico had it. It's been dark for days, but it just pinged. For a second, it's not a call. It's data, a low-level audio packet. It's just noise. "Play it," Luca commanded. Getting to his feet, Sal hit a key. A faint, tinny, rhythmic tapping filled the room. Tap, 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 tap. I didn't recognize it. It was just noise. But Luca went perfectly still. His head tilted. He was listening. "Again," he whispered. Sal played it again. Tap, 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 tap. A tear rolled down Luca's face. A single, hot tear. "Isabella," he breathed. "What?" It's the lullaby," he said, his voice cracking. "My mother, she used to sing it to me. Nina nana, nina oh. I taught it to Emery. I taught it to her, right here, in this house. I told her it was our secret, our securo." He looked at Sal. Where did it come from?" Sal's fingers flew. "It's routing through a private seller network, the Barone family. Oh, God, boss, it's coming from the Barone vineyard, upstate. The vineyard, Nico, the old way." I grabbed Luca's arm. "Wine. He smelled like wine. Ryder, on the video call. I thought he was just drunk. But there was a clang, the bell, and he smelled like wine, like a cellar." "The cantina," Luca whispered, his eyes wide. "The old bootlegging tunnels. They run from the cellar, under the river. He's not in the house. He's under it." He was moving. He grabbed the gun from his desk. He looked at Sal. "Wipe it, wipe everything, tell no one." He looked at me. "You stay here." "No. Maya, this is not a request. This is a war." "She is my daughter," I said, my voice as hard as his. "She is in that cellar, tapping a song you taught her, a song I didn't even know. She is saving herself. You think I am going to sit here and wait? I am not a liability. I am not your weakness. I am her mother. I am coming, or you can shoot me, but I am not staying." He stared at me for a long, hard second. He saw the iron in my spine. He saw the mother bear. He didn't see a weakness. He saw a mirror. "Antonio, Gianni." He snapped into his intercom. "Full tactical, front entrance, 5 minutes." He looked at me. "You do exactly what I say. You do not speak. You do not move. You breathe when I tell you to. Understood. Understood." The night was black. No moon. We drove in silence. The truck's engine a low growl. Just the 4 of us. Me, Luca, and his 2 most trusted men, Antonio and Gianni. The men who had been with him since the beginning. The men who had never flinched. The vineyard was dark. The gates were locked. Gianni cut the chain with a pair of bolt cutters that snapped the metal with a sickening thunk. We didn't drive to the house. We parked in the trees and moved on foot, through the rows of sleeping grapevines. The air was cold, damp, smelling of rich earth. Luca moved like a shadow. He didn't seem to touch the ground. The entrance to the tunnels wasn't in the main cellar. It was, as Luca had known, hidden under an old stone well house 100 yards from the main residence. Gianni picked the lock. Luca lifted the heavy stone trapdoor. Cold, damp air, smelling of earth and old, spilled wine, rose to meet us. "Give me your hand," Luca whispered to me. "Do not let go." I gripped his hand. It was hard as steel. We descended. It was pitch black. Luca had a small, tactical flashlight, the beam cutting a tight, white circle in the oppressive dark. The walls were weeping. I could hear, dripping. And then, I heard her. Tap, 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 tap. Faint. But it was her. "Emery." I breathed. "Shh." Luca commanded. We moved, fast but silent. The tunnel twisted. "It's a storage room," Luca whispered, pointing. "An old dry storage, up here." A heavy, wooden door, bolted from the outside. My heart was going to explode. Gianni and Antonio took positions, one on either side of the tunnel, guns raised. Luca slid the heavy iron bolt. It was old, unoiled. It screamed against the metal. A sharp clang of metal on metal from inside. She had dropped what she was tapping with. Luca ripped the door open. She was there, sitting on a dusty cot, a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. She was pale. She was terrified, but she was okay. Mommy? I flew to her. I ripped her off the cot, my arms crushing her, my nose in her hair. Emery, baby. Oh God, you came, she whispered, her arms locking around my neck. I knew you'd come. I sang the song, the Sicuro song. I heard you. Piccolina, Luca said, his voice thick. He put his hand on her head, his whole body trembling. I heard you. Boss, Antonio's voice. Urgent. Headlights. I heard them. The rumble of a car engine, coming down the gravel path above us. He's here. Luca growled. He shut the heavy door, plunging us back into darkness. He knew. He was waiting. The sound, I whispered, my blood running cold. The bolt. He heard the bolt. Get her, Luca said, his voice ice. Get her behind the barrels, now. The main part of the cellar was filled with massive, ancient wine barrels, stacked 3 high. Luca shoved me and Emery into a small crevice between 2 of them. It was dark. It smelled of sour wine and spiderwebs. You do not move, he commanded me. You do not make a sound. You protect her. Do you understand me? Yes, I whispered. He looked at me, his eyes burning in the dark. He leaned in and kissed me, hard, fast, a kiss that tasted of fear and gunpowder. I love you, he whispered. I'll find you. Then he was gone. I heard shouting, in Italian, Nico's voice, booming, echoing in the cellar. You're a fool, Luca. You came for the girl. I knew you would. You're weak, just like your father. You're predictable. Nico, Luca's voice. It's over. Let them go. This is between you and me. It is between you and me, boy, Nico roared. And this is how it ends. The world exploded. The sound of gunfire in the enclosed space was deafening. It was a physical blow. Emery screamed, a high, thin sound, and I clapped my hand over her mouth, pulling her tight against my chest. It's okay, baby. It's okay. It's a game. It's just thunder. I lied, my whole body shaking. The air filled with the sharp, acrid smell of cordite. Bullets whined off the stone walls. Wood splintered as barrels burst, spilling wine onto the floor. I heard a man scream, a terrible, wet sound. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing Emery's face into my shoulder, covering her ears. I love you. Emery, I love you. I love you. Another scream, more gunfire, and then silence. A heavy, terrible, dripping silence. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of spilled wine. Luca, I whispered. Nothing. Luca, I screamed. Stay there. His voice. He was alive. I heard footsteps. Heavy. Dragging. I peeked out from behind the barrel. It was a war zone. 2 of Nico's men were on the floor, unmoving. Antonio was leaning against the wall, his legs soaked in blood, but he gave me a grim thumbs up. Gianni was okay. And Luca was facing Nico. They were in the center of the cellar. Both of them were a mess. Their guns were gone. Nico was holding a knife, a long, thin blade. Luca was empty-handed. You see? Nico panted, a wild, manic grin on his face. It always comes down to this. The old way. The real way. No guns, no tech, just blood. You killed my mother, Nico, Luca said, his voice low. What? Nico's grin faltered. That was the Caleres. That wasn't... I loved your mother. You let it happen, Luca growled, circling him. You let my father go for revenge instead of protecting her. You fed his rage. You wanted this. You've always wanted this. It was mine. Nico lunged. Luca was faster. He sidestepped, grabbing Nico's wrist, and slammed his elbow into Nico's face. I heard a crack. Nico roared, twisting, and the knife. It slashed. It cut deep across Luca's side. Luca, I screamed. Luca grunted, a deep sound of pain, but he didn't let go. He drove his head into Nico's face. Nico staggered back, and Luca brought his knee up, hard into Nico's chest. Nico fell. He landed hard on the stone floor, the knife skittering away. Luca stood over him, breathing in great, ragged gasps, his hand pressed to his side. His hand was... It was covered in blood. It was... always... mine? Nico choked, blood bubbling from his lips. He was weak, and you... You're weaker, a woman, a child. No, Luca panted. I'm just tired. Nico's eyes, full of hate, looked past Luca, at me, at Emery. Ryder was the tool. He was so easy, a stupid, arrogant tool to get her to the table, to... His eyes glazed. His head fell to the side. He was gone. I ran from behind the barrels, carrying Emery. Luca, I sobbed. You're hurt. Oh, God. Luca. He was bleeding. A lot. The slash was deep. He looked at me. At Emery. His face was pale, covered in sweat and grime. He smiled, a real, pained, exhausted smile. Hey, Piccolina, he whispered to Emery. You were very brave. You sang the song. He staggered. I grabbed him. Antonio coming up on his other side, and we held him up. Let's go home, and he whispered. Then his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed, a dead weight in my arms. We were back at the stone house. It was almost dawn. Emery was asleep. Sophia had given her a warm bath, a cup of hot chocolate, and she was now buried under a mountain of blankets in my bed, her stuffed bear clutched tight. She was safe. Antonio was fine. The bullet had gone clean through his thigh. Sophia, who apparently knew how to do everything, had stitched him up. Luca was on the sofa in the living room. I had cut his shirt off. The wound was long and it was deep, but it had missed his organs. It was clean. You need a doctor, I whispered, my hands shaking as I pressed a clean, wet cloth to the wound. You're better, he rasped, his eyes closed. You have a softer touch. Luca, don't, I said, a sob catching in my throat. I thought you were dead. Not yet, he whispered. I finished cleaning it. I had Sophia bring me the medical kit. I butterfly stitched the gash, my hands shaking so hard I barely knew what I was doing. He never made a sound. He just watched me. When I was done, I wrapped his ribs tight. I sat back on my heels, my adrenaline gone, leaving only an exhaustion so profound I thought I would melt into the floor. I looked at him. This impossible, terrible, beautiful man, this monster, this savior. I love you, I whispered. The words just fell out. I hadn't planned them. They were just true. I love you, Luca. I think I've loved you since you were teaching Emery how to draw. I was just too scared to see it. He didn't move. Then his hand, the one that wasn't covered in his own blood, came up. He covered my hand, the one that was resting on his chest. He held it there, his grip surprisingly strong. His eyes opened, they were clear, and they were peaceful. I know, mia cara, he whispered, his voice rough. I think I've known since you warned me at that table. You looked at me. Not like I was a monster. Not like I was a king. You looked at me like I was a man. And you were terrified. But you did it anyway. I didn't have a name for it. Not until I saw you, at the window of that glass house, watching me. He squeezed my hand. I love you, Maya Quinn. I broke then. I put my head down on his chest, next to my hand, and I cried. I cried for the fear and the blood and the pain and for the simple, terrifying, unbelievable relief. He just held my hand, his other hand coming up to stroke my hair. It's okay, he whispered. Sakuro, you're safe now. I promise, it's over. Wounds heal, the physical ones, at least. Luca's side was an angry, red map of his fight with Nico, a story I had stitched together with shaking hands. For the first week, he was quiet, resting on the sofa in the stone house, his strength slowly returning. But I could see the other. Deeper wounds were closing, too. The armor was gone, the coldness, the distance, the crushing weight of the capo. It was all dissolving. He was just Luca, the man who watched Emery draw with a quiet, intense focus, the man who would reach for my hand in the middle of the night, his grip tight, as if to reassure himself we were both still there. The transition wasn't a single event. It was a war of attrition, fought not with guns, but with lawyers and bank transfers. He didn't just walk away, he tore his empire apart. He called meetings, not in dark cellars, but in sterile, high-rise boardrooms. I sat in the outer office, watching men in expensive suits walk in, their faces hard and confident, and walk out an hour later, their faces pale and shaken. He was a shark, but he was swimming in a new ocean. He sold the shipping lanes. He liquidated the clubs. He turned over the routes and the networks to Antonio, the one loyal lieutenant left standing, the one who had taken a bullet for us in that cellar. "You're giving it to him?" I asked one night, after a 14-hour day of negotiations. "I'm giving him the poison," Luca said, rubbing his tired eyes. "Antonio is a good man, but he's a soldier. He knows the life. He doesn't want another one. I'm keeping the construction business, the import-export, the real estate." He looked at me, a ghost of a smile on his face. "The parts that are clean, the parts my father started before. He was cutting the rod out, piece by piece. It was harder, he'd said, than killing a man. It was 1,000 small deaths. Every signature was a betrayal of his past, of his father's legacy. And every signature was a vow to me, to Emery, to the future. While he was dismantling his old life, I was putting the final nail in the coffin of mine. The court date was a formality. Anna Cantrell, a shark in a pinstriped suit, had filed the motion, with Ryder's conviction, with the evidence of his criminal ties, his abuse, his kidnapping plot. It was an avalanche. I sat in the courtroom, Luca's hand warm and steady on my back. He wasn't in the shadows this time. He was beside me. The judge, a woman with tired eyes, didn't even look up from the file. "In the matter of Quinn v. Flynn," she said, her voice dry, "I have reviewed the extensive evidence, the criminal convictions, and the recommendations from Child Services. I am hereby terminating all parental rights of Mr. Ryder Flynn. Full and sole legal and physical custody is granted to Mrs. Maya Quinn." She stamped a paper. Thud, the sound of that gavel. It was the sound of a cell door closing, the sound of a chain breaking. I didn't cry. I just breathed. I breathed for the first time in 3 years, without the weight of him on my chest. Luca's hand squeezed my shoulder. I leaned back into him. It was over. We didn't stay at the stone house. It was his mother's shrine. It was his father's fortress. It was a place of ghosts and grief. We needed a home. Luca found it. He didn't ask me. He just knew. We drove for an hour, away from the city, away from the upstate enclaves of old money and high fences. We turned onto a county road, lined with maple trees that were just beginning to hint at the colors of fall. It was a house, just a house, a white farmhouse, 2 stories, with a wide, welcoming front porch and a slightly crooked black shutter on one window. It wasn't a compound, it wasn't a glass box, it wasn't new, or sterile, or bulletproof. It had a yard, a big, sprawling, messy yard with an old oak tree and a tire swing. It's normal," I whispered, getting out of the car. "Is that okay?" Luca asked, his voice hesitant. He was still learning. He was still expecting me to want the high walls, the security. I ran up the steps. The paint was peeling a little. I turned, my hand on the front door. "It's perfect," I said, my voice thick. "It's sicuro." He smiled, a real, slow, genuine smile, the kind that reached his dark eyes and lit them from within. "I'm glad. I bought the 20 acres around it, just in case." I laughed, a real, genuine laugh. "You can't help yourself, can you?" "I'm learning," he said, walking up the steps to stand beside me, but old habits. We were safe, not because of guards, though I knew, somewhere discreet. A car was probably watching the main road. We were safe because the threats were gone. Nico was dead. Ryder was in a cage. The Empire was someone else's problem. We were just us. Emery started school, a real public school, full of noisy children and finger painting, the first day. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I walked her to the door, my hand gripping hers. Luca, who had claimed he had a call, was parked across the street, his sunglasses on, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Mommy, you're squeezing my hand," Emery said, tugging away. "I know, baby, I'm sorry. Are you scared?" "No," she said, adjusting her backpack. "It's just school. You're the one who's scared." She grinned. "Is Luca scared too?" "Luca is making sure the car is okay." I lied. "Okay," she said. "I love you. See you later." And she just walked away. She ran, actually, toward a group of girls by the swings. She didn't look back. I stood there, my hand over my mouth, until the bell rang. I walked back to the car. Luca was still staring at the school entrance. She just went," I said, sliding into the passenger seat. "She's strong," he said, his voice rough. She's not afraid. She's not." I said, "She's not like me." "No," he said, finally turning to look at me, his gaze soft. She's like you. The you I met at that table, the one who was terrified, but did it anyway." A few weeks later, I was unpacking her backpack, peanut butter and jelly crusts, a permission slip for a field trip, and a single sheet of lined paper. It was titled, "In Her Best, Careful." 9-year-old cursive, "The Man Who Listened to Me." My heart stopped. I sat down at the kitchen table. "I have a new dad," she wrote. "His name is Luca. He's very tall. He does not smile a lot, but his eyes smile. I like his eyes. My old dad was loud. He yelled. He never listened. He was a bad man. He made my mommy cry. Luca is not loud. He is quiet. One time, I was scared. We were in a fancy place. I heard some men talking. They were talking in my nonno's secret words, the Sicilian words. I told my mommy. The men were bad. They wanted to hurt Luca with bad wine. I was scared. I didn't want to make a scene. My mommy was scared too. But then I looked at Luca, and he was not looking at the men. He was looking at me. He looked sad. So I ran. I told him. I said the words, Veleno, poison. He did not yell. He did not say I was lying. He did not tell me to be quiet. He just listened. He stopped, and he listened to me, a little girl, and then he saved us. Now he is teaching me to draw. He says the secret to drawing is not the shadow. It is the light around the shadow. He's also teaching me how to say sicuro. It means safe. He's my sicuro. He's the man who listened to me, and he is going to be my real dad. I was still sitting there, the paper clutched in my hand, silent tears streaming down my face. When Luca came in, he saw me, and his face tensed with concern. "Maya, what's wrong? Is it the school? Is she—" I couldn't speak. I just held out the paper. He took it. He read it. I watched him, his broad shoulders tensed, his jaw clenched. He read it a second time. He carefully, so carefully, folded the paper and put it on the table. He didn't look at me. He walked to the kitchen window and stared out at the big oak tree. His hands braced on the counter. His back was rigid. I waited. I don't know, he finally said, his voice a low, strangled rasp. "I don't know how to be that, the man she wrote about. You don't have to be him, Luca," I whispered. Walking up behind him, I put my arms around his waist, pressing my cheek to his strong back. "You are him. You've been him all along." He turned in my arms, his hands coming up to cup my face. His eyes were shining. He was crying. This big, strong, terrifying man was crying, silently, his thumbs stroking my cheeks. I love her so much," he whispered, his voice breaking. It terrifies me. Maya, the way I love you both, it's a weak point. It's a liability." "No," I said, reaching up to cover his hands with mine. "You told me that once before, in your mother's room. It's not a weakness. It's your why. It's your reason. It's the light around the shadow." He looked at me, his gaze so full of love, so raw and open. It took my breath away. I can't," he said, his voice thick. "I can't just be her new dad. I can't just be the man you live with." My heart started to pound. What are you saying? He took a shaky breath. He didn't get on one knee. He didn't have a ring. He didn't have a speech. He just held my face, his dark, beautiful, tear-filled eyes locked on mine. "Marry me, Maya," he whispered. "Please, be my wife. Let me be her father. For real. Legally. Let me be your family. Let me be the man who gets to listen to you both. Forever." "Yes," I sobbed. It wasn't even a word. It was just a breath. Yes, of course. Yes. He kissed me. And it wasn't the kiss from the car, or the penthouse, or the stone house. It wasn't born of fear, or desperation, or passion. It was born of coffee and sunlight and an essay on lined paper. It was born of peace. It was the kiss of home. The wedding was small. It was perfect. We held it in the backyard, under the oak tree. Sophia, who had cried when Luca told her, had come up from the city, and she'd cooked enough food for an army. Antonio and Gianni were there. They were Luca's best men, his brothers, his last two anchors to his old life, and they stood there in matching dark suits, looking both incredibly proud and intensely awkward. And there was Emery. She wore a simple, white dress, her dark hair full of wildflowers she'd picked that morning. She was the one who held the rings. She stood between us as we faced the justice of the peace. I didn't have a fancy dress. I had a simple, cream-colored dress I'd bought at the local department store. Luca wore a navy blue suit, no tie. He looked at me. He didn't look at anyone else. "Luca, I promise," he said, his voice rough, "to be your Securo. I promise to be your safe place. I promise to listen, always. I promise to be the man you and Emery deserve. I promise." To just be your husband. When it was my turn, I couldn't stop crying. Maya, I promise to trust you. I promise to see the light. I promise to be your partner. I promise to be your home. Emery held up the rings, her small hands trembling with the importance of it. "You can kiss her now. Luca," she yelled, before the justice of the peace could even speak. And he did. He laughed, a real, free, joyful sound, and he pulled me into his arms, lifting me off the ground as he kissed me, and I wrapped my legs around him, and it was perfect. The reception was just dinner. We sat at a long table, under strings of twinkle lights, and we ate and we laughed. Luca stood up, his glass in his hand. I'm not a man who makes speeches," he started, and Antonio coughed. "That's for sure." Luca grinned. I lived my whole life in the dark. I was born in it. I thought it was the only thing. I thought that love, that family, was a liability, a weakness, a thing your enemies could use. He turned, his eyes finding mine, and the entire world just vanished. And then I met you, Maya, and you. You walked into the darkest part of my life, and you weren't scared of the shadows. You looked for the light. And Emery, you didn't just give me a reason to walk away. You gave me a place to walk to. You gave me a reason to be better, to be brave. You saved my life, not just at that table. You saved my life, and I love you more than anything. To Maya, they all echoed. That night was a healing. We tucked Emery in. She was exhausted, fast asleep before her head hit the pillow. Luca came into our room. I was standing by the window, watching the moon over our yard. He came up behind me. He didn't touch me, not at first. He just stood there, his warmth at my back. "My wife," he whispered, as if the word was new, a foreign, beautiful thing. "My husband, and I whispered back, turning in his arms. He held me, just held me. We stood in the quiet, in the moonlight, for a long time. There was no urgency, no desperation, no fear. The ghosts were gone. He kissed my forehead, his lips soft. I've waited my whole life for this, he murmured. For peace. It's here. Luca, it's real. He unzipped my dress, his hands slow, deliberate. It wasn't the frantic, desperate touch from the penthouse. It was reverence. It was a prayer. I helped him with his shirt, my hands tracing the long, silvery scar on his side, my stitching, my mark. He was my husband. He led me to the bed. He laid me down, and he just looked at me. He looked at me with an openness, a vulnerability that was more intimate than any touch. You're so beautiful, he breathed, his hand tracing my jaw, my neck, my collarbone. He made love to me, and it was a circle. It was a promise, kept. It was slow and deep and gentle. It was two broken, scarred people, finally, whole. It was not about passion. It was about trust. It was about belonging. It was about the man who had been a monster and the woman who had been a victim, finding in each other a home, a safe harbor. I fell asleep in his arms, his heart beating steady against my ear, his breath warm in my hair, for the first time in my entire life. I was sicuro. Months passed. The seasons turned. We lived. We were a family. We had breakfast. Luca taught Emery how to make his mother's frittata. I drove her to school. Luca worked. He was building. His construction company was thriving, but he was restless. "What's wrong?" I asked him one morning over coffee. "I'm bored," he admitted, looking slightly ashamed. "You're bored? You, the man who is running the entire New York underworld, is bored? I'm not a man who sits still. Maya, I need to build something for us. So build something." I said. He did. He was gone for weeks in the city. He came home late, smelling of sawdust and paint. "It's a surprise," he said, whenever I asked. On a rainy Tuesday, he drove us into the city. Emery was vibrating with excitement. He parked, not in a fancy garage, but on the street, in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. "This is it," he said. It wasn't la sorte. It wasn't dark wood and red leather. It was bright, clean. The front was all glass and warm, white brick. The sign above the door was simple, elegant, black script. It said, Table 12. I stopped on the sidewalk. My hand flew to my mouth. "Luca," I whispered. Why that? Why remember that?" He took my hand, his grip warm and strong. "Because," he said, his voice soft, It's not the name of the danger. Maya, it's the name of the moment. It's the moment my life, my real life, began. It's the moment a little girl, who understood more than anyone, saved me." He smiled at Emery. "It's our beginning." He opened the door. The restaurant was beautiful. It was warm, full of light and the scent of fresh bread and garlic. The hostess smiled. "Mr. Moretti, welcome. Our table is ready?" he asked. "Of course," she said. "Table 12, as always." She led us, not to the center, not to the throne. She led us to a quiet, private booth in the corner, a table for 3. I slid in, Emery sliding in beside me. Luca sat across from us. A waiter appeared, smiling. "Water, Mr. Moretti? Please." Luca said. He looked at me. He looked at Emery. He reached across the table, his hands covering mine, and Emery's, on top of mine. He was a man who had been born into a legacy of violence and death, a man who had been a shadow, a king, a monster. But here, in the light, he was just Luca, my husband, Emery's dad. He smiled, and his eyes were full of light. We were safe. We were together. We were home. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I truly hope you enjoyed it. We would love to hear your thoughts. Where in the world are you listening from? Let us know in the comments below. If you love this story, please don't forget to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories for new chapters and new adventures every week. Your support means the world to us. Please share your thoughts in English and we'll see you in the next story.